The fight started so suddenly that even the hawkers on the street dropped their trays and forgot they were supposed to be hustling customers. It was one of those hot Lagos afternoons when the sun behaved like it had personal beef with everybody, and traffic had locked the entire street like handcuffs. Danfo drivers were shouting. Pedestrians were sweating, and the air smelled like roasted corn mixed with impatience. Then, out of nowhere, two women burst into the center of the road, dragging each other by their clothes, screaming like the whole world belonged to only them. One wig flew to the left, the other to the right. A baby started crying in the distance. Drivers leaned on their horns as if noise was going to settle the fight. People gathered immediately because in Africa, bad news spreads faster than fire. All it takes is one person to shout, "Leave her! Don't let her kill her!" And within seconds, phones were already up recording. A man selling groundnuts whispered, "This one go viral by evening." Another woman shouted, "Somebody hold them! They will kill themselves for nothing." But nobody could go close because the fight was too hot. Slaps flying, nails digging, clothes tearing, legs kicking, curses raining like heavy storm. One of the fighters, a tall, slim woman with sweat dripping down her neck, held the other woman's head tie and pulled it so hard that the poor woman screamed like somebody stabbed her with pepper. The smaller woman fought back with the energy of 5 people, grabbing the tall one's blouse and tearing it down the side. People gasped loudly. Someone shouted, "Ah, Jesus!" No tear cloth. But the women did not hear anything except their own anger. The whole street felt like a market of anger. Drivers leaned out their windows, shouting advice nobody asked for. Hit her chest. Drag her hair. Kick her leg. A man in the crowd said loudly, if only this fight happened in Ghana, by now they would have separated them. Lagos people just watch fight like film. But the truth was, nobody wanted to get too close. These women were fighting like their entire village insulted their ancestors. Even a brave policeman standing nearby pretended to talk on his radio, so nobody would force him to enter the chaos. That was when everything changed, because from the far end of the crowd, a man began to walk forward slowly. He didn't look strong, he didn't look brave, he didn't even look like someone who wanted to be involved in anybody's walla. He was simply a middle-aged African man, dark brown skin, short height, round belly, wearing an old polo shirt tucked into trousers that looked like they were begging for retirement. He walked like someone who was tired of life, but still moving because he didn't have any other choice. People noticed him, but nobody paid attention until he got closer, and the crowd started shifting like they saw a ghost. A young boy covered his nose dramatically and shouted, "Ah, he done come." Another man whispered sharply, "Everybody stand back. If this man talk now, this fight going by force." The man kept walking. His face was calm. His step was steady. And the crowd split open for him like water shifts for a canoe, because everybody knew him, not by his name, not by his job, not by his age. People knew him for one thing, his mouth. The odor inside his mouth was not an ordinary odor. It was not the type you argue with or fight with. It was the kind that made market women pause, children run, and even dogs change direction. They said his mouth odor had lived longer than some people's marriages. They said it had authority. They said it had power. And whenever there was a fight anywhere around that community, this man somehow always appeared. And any time he opened his mouth to speak, the fight ended immediately. Nobody understood the science behind it, but nobody questioned it either. He reached the middle of the road and stopped directly in front of the two women, who were still rolling on the ground like angry tigers. The crowd held their breath. The man looked down at the fighters, sighed deeply like someone forced to do hard work, then opened his mouth to speak. "My S." He didn't finish the first word before the tall woman jolted like someone poured hot water on her. She froze mid-swing, eyes wide. The smaller woman sniffed the air, then abruptly let go of the fight and rolled away like she was escaping an explosion. People in the crowd began stepping back, some fanning themselves, others laughing quietly. The man attempted to talk again. "My S.I." The tall woman stood up immediately and raised two hands like she surrendered to police. "I'm not fighting again," she shouted. Her voice cracked. "I swear I have stopped." The smaller woman used her scarf to cover her nose while crawling backward. Somebody should help me stand up before I die here. The crowd exploded with laughter. A man shouted boldly, "Powerful man, Olga, you try. Your mouth is the real tear gas." A market woman said, "This man no need uniform. If government use war go finish." Even the policeman who had been pretending to use the radio suddenly became active. He stepped forward quickly. "Yes, yes. Everybody go home. Fight is over." Nobody listened to him. Of course. They were still watching the man. The two fighters were now begging to go home, apologizing to each other, without even knowing what they were apologizing for. It was incredible. It was dramatic. It was unbelievable. An entire street went silent, staring at the man who just stood there, mouth closed again, looking confused as to why life had chosen him for such a talent. He didn't enjoy the attention. He didn't like being seen as the man with the powerful mouth. But this was not the first time he had stopped a fight. Fight after fight, year after year. Somehow his odor had become a local peacekeeping tool. But this time was different. This time, the incident spread with lightning speed. Someone had recorded the moment the two fighting women froze and surrendered. Within minutes, WhatsApp groups were buzzing. See the man that stops fight with his mouth. Lego superhero. Legos tear gas. People in Abuja, Accra, South Africa, Jamaica, Thailand, UK, and even the USA began reposting the video. Women 45 plus in Facebook groups were commenting things like, "God still uses the weak things of this world. Lord have mercy, this one is stronger than pepper." Solution can come from strange places. Before evening, the man was trending. Strangers were laughing, crying, joking, praising, mocking, every emotion possible. But while everyone was rejoicing, gossiping, and sharing the story, the man himself was quietly walking home, shaking his head, wondering when his life had turned into this. When he reached his street, children saw him and ran inside their houses before he even opened his mouth. A woman selling tomatoes quickly covered her basket with cloth, like she was protecting it from harm. A mechanic near shop turned his back and pretended to be adjusting his trousers. The man sighed. Being known for something you didn't choose was painful. He just wanted to live a normal life. But life had other plans. He reached his house, a small rented apartment with peeling paint, walked inside, and his wife looked up from the kitchen. She was a soft-spoken woman with gentle eyes and a strong spirit. She smiled at him the way women who have endured many years of marriage understand things without explanation. "You helped him again?" she asked. He didn't answer immediately. He sat down heavily and rubbed his forehead. "Everybody saw me," he muttered. "I didn't even want to be there. I was just passing." His wife came closer and placed her hand on his shoulder. "You have a gift," she said gently, "even if the gift is unusual." He looked at her with frustration. "Gift? Me? You really think this is a gift?" She smiled again. "Maybe God uses you in ways you don't understand." Just then his phone vibrated. He picked it up and nearly dropped it. His video had already hit 1.7 million views. Comments were pouring in from all over the world. "You are a hero. Sir, please don't talk to me directly if I offend you. Your mouth can stop World War III. This man needs presidential award." He shook his head in disbelief. His wife laughed softly. "Well, at least you won't be forgotten again." He didn't know whether to be happy or sad. But one thing he knew for sure. The world had now discovered him, and there was no going back. A heavy breeze blew through the window, lifting the curtain slightly. The evening sky outside was glowing orange. Somewhere far in the street, neighbors were still discussing the legendary moment, and he sat quietly, unaware that the fame he gained today would bring him shame later, unaware that the same mouth that stopped a riot today would fail him publicly soon, unaware that the world that laughed and celebrated him today would mock him tomorrow. But for now, as the sun went down over the busy African city, he leaned back, closed his eyes, and breathed deeply. Outside, people kept whispering, "That is the man who stops fight with his mouth." Inside, he whispered to himself, "God, what are you doing with my life? Before this chapter ends, Let me say this to the viewers watching this story on YouTube. Before we continue, please pause a bit, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us grow and bring more powerful African stories to you. Now, let's dive deeper into the journey of the man whose life changed because of a fight on a hot afternoon. And that was how the story truly began. The next morning began quietly, but nothing in the man's life ever remained quiet for long. Before the sun even touched the rooftops, children playing outside his compound were already whispering his story like a secret tale from a Yoruba village moonlight night. Little voices giggled and echoed, "That's the man who stops fight with mouth." And each time they said it, they held their noses and ran away screaming with laughter. He heard them from inside but didn't bother to shout. After so many years, he had developed the kind of patience only life's strange experiences can teach a person. His wife placed a cup of hot tea on the table and looked at him softly. "Try and drink something this morning," she said. "Your mind is heavy." He stared at the cup like someone staring at a burden. "I didn't ask to be famous," he muttered. "I didn't ask for any of this." He pushed the cup slightly away. "Why can't people just forget about me?" His wife chuckled. "Forget you? After the whole world saw you yesterday?" She shook her head. "My dear, even the angels in heaven have probably seen your video by now." He sighed deeply, closing his eyes. He was not ready for another day of whispers and stares. He just wanted to go to his small kiosk, sell the few phone accessories he had, earn enough money for the day, and return home in peace. But life had different plans. His phone vibrated again. He picked up slowly, fearing what new drama awaited him. It was a message from a woman in Accra. "Sir, please come to Ghana. My neighbor and I are not talking. We need your help urgently." He shook his head in disbelief. Before he could reply, another message came in from a man in South Africa. "My wife and her sister are fighting over a pot of soup. Please, how can I book your flight?" He threw the phone on the table. "See my life," he groaned. "People really want to fly me abroad just to separate fights. Fight way no concern me." His wife burst into laughter until she almost dropped the towel in her hand. "My husband, you have become international peacemaker," she declared dramatically. "Ambassador of mouth odor affairs." He gave her a side eye. "It's not funny." "Oh, it is," she replied, wiping her eyes. "It is very funny." He stood up, grabbed his bag, and walked out of the house, preparing himself mentally for whatever the world had planned for him today. The sun was already rising, painting the sky gold and orange. Lagos was waking up its usual madness. Hawkers shouting, motorcycles zigzagging, Danfo drivers honking as if their horns were connected to their lungs. As he stepped into the street, neighbors immediately became alert. A woman frying akara shifted her stool away slightly. "Good morning, sir," she greeted politely, covering her nose with a small hand towel. Two men sitting on a bench sat up straight when they saw him, their conversation stopping abruptly. The moment he walked past, one whispered loudly, "Is he breathing? Did he open his mouth?" Another man quickly answered, "No, he didn't. Calm down, you won't faint today." He ignored them and kept walking. At the bus stop, a young conductor saw him and froze. Instead of shouting, "Ojoda, Ojoda, enter with your change," the boy switched suddenly to polite mode. He quickly stepped aside and said respectfully, "Good morning, sir. Please stand here. Breeze will blow well." The man stared at him. "Why are you talking like that?" The conductor whispered, "If you talk small, everybody go scatter. I dey protect my passengers." Before he could reply, a loud commotion erupted from the far end of the street. People were shouting again. Another fight had started. He groaned. "God, please," he whispered to himself. "Not today." But people had already seen him. And once they saw him, hope lit their eyes like someone switched on generator after long blackout. "Oga, Oga, please come," a woman shouted, waving her hands like a traffic warden. "They are fighting again. We need you." The man responded quickly, "Leave me. I'm not separating anybody today. I am going to my shop." But they didn't hear him. They never heard him when fights were involved. They dragged him like he was a firefighter running toward burning houses. They pushed him, escorted him, carried him halfway, and by the time he realized what was happening, he was already standing in the middle of another fight scene. This time, it was two bus drivers, big, muscular, stubborn men, arguing over who scratched whose vehicle. One was shouting, "You be mad, man. Reverse your nonsense bus." And the other replied, "Your papa no teach you manners." They were about to punch each other when people began screaming, "He's here. He has come." The two men paused mid-insult. They looked at the crowd, then looked at him. One of the drivers blinked. "Is that?" The other swallowed hard. "It's him." The crowd stepped back in perfect synchronization, leaving a clear space between the fighters and the man. He raised both hands in surrender. "Please, I don't want to do anything. I don't want trouble." The drivers panicked immediately. The taller one said quickly, "Olga, no talk. I beg. No, open your mouth." "Yes. Yes, sir," the other driver said, backing away. "We don't fight again. Fight done finish." The man frowned deeply. "So, why did you people drag me here, if fight is already finished?" Someone from the back shouted, "Just in case." In case they start again. The crowd clapped. They celebrated him like he was a national treasure. Some women shook his hand. A man bowed for him. Children danced around him like he was a festival masquerade. He stood there in confusion, sweating, unsure whether to be flattered, angry, or ashamed. After everything calmed down, he finally reached a small phone accessories kiosk. It was barely the size of a wardrobe, but it had served him faithfully for years. He opened a rusted padlock and sat down, hoping for peace. He didn't get it. A woman entered the shop immediately, breathing fast like she ran from a lion. "Good afternoon, sir," she said. He raised his eyebrows. "What do you want to buy?" She shook her head. "I'm not here to buy anything. Two women are fighting in the next street. Please come and help." He dropped his head on his table and tapped it gently. "Not again." She clasped her hands. "Please, sir. They are even tearing clothes. Somebody might get injured." He stood up reluctantly, walked out, and followed her. As they approached the scene, people saw him coming and screamed like help arrived from heaven. Peacemaker. Ambassador. "Sir, please do something." The man breathed in slowly, then exhaled. He hated that this had become his life, but he couldn't watch people hurt each other. So he stepped forward. The moment he opened his mouth, only slightly, both fighting women jumped apart like someone poured cold river water on them. One woman shouted, "I swear I'm not fighting again. I don't want trouble today." The other covered her nose dramatically and ran into her shop. The man didn't even say a word. He just stood there, his presence alone enough to settle everything. By the time he walked back to his kiosk, more people had gathered. Some took selfies with him. Others asked him questions he didn't have answers to. One man said, "Sir, please teach me your technique." The man almost slapped him. "Technique? What technique? I am not using anything." Another person asked, "Is your breath gifted by angels? Please leave my shop." The man shouted, frustrated. But the questions kept coming. How do you activate it? What do you eat in the morning? Is it something we can learn? Can you stop political fights? Can you stop marital fights? Can you stop my mother-in-law? He wanted to scream. The worst part was when a journalist from Abuja arrived with a small camera and microphone. She approached him with a big smile. "Sir, can you please tell the world how you discovered this unusual ability?" He stared at her as if she was insane. "Madam, please leave me alone." But she didn't leave him alone. She recorded him anyway. She followed him around. She asked more questions. When she finally left, she promised to air the interview across Africa. His wife came to check on him in the afternoon. She found him looking exhausted, head resting against the shop wall. "You can't continue like this," she said gently. He looked at her with tired eyes. "I didn't choose this." "I know," she replied softly. "But maybe you can use it for good." "I already am," he snapped. She touched his shoulder. "But you're not happy. And if you are not happy, your gift becomes a burden, not a blessing. He exhaled slowly. She took his hand. You need to learn balance. Help when necessary. But protect your peace too. Evening came slowly, and the street grew quieter. But his mind did not. Questions circled in his head like restless birds. Why him? Why this? How long would this continue? Was there a reason behind it? Was there something he wasn't seeing? People kept walking past the shop, smiling, waving, whispering. Some even came close, checking if he was breathing before they greeted him. It was both funny and deeply embarrassing. As the sky turned purple and the streetlights flickered on, he packed his things and closed his shop. His wife walked beside him on the way home. He said quietly, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." She replied, "You will know when the time comes." He didn't understand her words yet. But very soon, very, very soon, he would discover that everything happening around him was preparing him for a moment nobody expected. A moment when his so-called gift would fail him in a way that would shock the entire community and change his life forever. For now, he walked home silently, unaware that the biggest challenge of his new fame was just around the corner. The day his power failed did not look dangerous at first. The morning started like any other African morning, slightly cool, slightly noisy, and full of small chaos that makes the city feel alive. Birds were arguing in the trees, generators were humming from different compounds, and the smell of fresh acra mixed with exhaust fumes floated across the waking streets. People opened their shops. Children wore uniforms for school, and the man hoped, with all his heart, that the world would forget about him today. But fame does not forget people easily, especially the kind of fame built on unexpected gifts. He stepped outside to buy bread from the woman who sold by the junction. She saw him and immediately greeted with too much respect. "Good morning, sir," she said, but her eyes widened as if she was approaching a minister. He sighed deeply. "Good morning." He didn't want to make her uncomfortable, so he kept his lips pressed together, talking with only half his mouth open. But she still stepped back slightly as if space could protect her from fate. "Do you have small bread?" he asked. She nodded quickly, grabbed a loaf, and stretched her hand forward like she was handing a holy offering. He collected it gently, paid, and walked off quietly. He had just taken 3 steps when 2 young boys ran past him, laughing loudly. "That's him," one shouted. "The man who can stop war," the second screamed. He kept walking, pretending not to hear them. But inside he felt tired. Tired of eyes watching him. Tired of whispers. Tired of people dragging him into problems he did not create. He just wanted to breathe today. But trouble was waiting for him around the corner. As he approached the small street that led to his kiosk, he heard a sound that froze him mid-step. It was not the sound of a small argument. It was not a minor quarrel. It was a sound of heavy destruction, bottles breaking, loud shouts, angry threats, and people screaming for safety. Something serious was happening. "Fight! Fight! Everybody run, oh!" someone shouted. People began rushing back, fear on their faces. He stopped a running teenager and asked, "What's going on?" The boy pointed ahead with trembling hands. 2 gangmen are fighting. Real gangmen, not ordinary street boys. The man swallowed slowly. Gangmen? Those ones were not like other fighters. They did not mind injury. They did not mind blood. They fought like their spirits controlled them. How was he supposed to enter a fight like that? Before he could turn away quietly, someone spotted him. A woman screamed his name loud enough for the whole street to hear. "He's here! He's here! The man who stops fight is here." In 1 second, more voices joined. "Please help us." "Sir, come quickly. They will kill each other. Only you can stop them." He froze. His heart began beating fast. This was not like the usual market women, or the bus drivers, or the petty quarrels. This was something bigger, stronger, dangerous. His legs refused to move, but the crowd did not care about his fear. When people are desperate, they forget you are human too. They push him forward, shouting, pulling his arms, guiding him like a soldier going into war. He begged softly, "Please stop, let me go back." But nobody listened. When they reached the fight, he saw what fear looked like. 2 huge men, broad shoulders, muscular bodies, covered in tattoos, were fighting with a level of anger that could tear a whole street apart. One held a broken bottle. The other lifted a heavy metal rod. Their eyes were wide with rage. Sweat poured down their dark brown skin. Clothes were torn. And every time one swung the weapon, people screamed and scattered backward. One woman cried loudly, "They will kill each other." Somebody stopped them. Somebody pushed a man forward. "There! He is here. Sir, please do something." He felt trapped. He didn't want to be a hero today. He didn't want to risk his life for two angry strangers who probably wouldn't even appreciate it. But the crowd kept chanting softly behind him. "You can do it. You always do it. Please help." He stepped forward reluctantly. Both fighters noticed a movement and turned to look at him. For the first time, they paused, not because they feared him, but because they were confused. "Who be this one?" one gang man growled. "Why you come here?" The other asked. The man swallowed hard. His heart was shaking. Sweat rolled down his back. He opened his mouth slightly and said, "Stop this." Nothing happened. The fighters blinked. The crowd waited. He tried again, opening his mouth wider this time. And, "Stop." Still nothing. The fighters did not react. They did not freeze. They did not jump apart. They did not surrender like others. They just looked at him like he was wasting their time. The man felt his stomach drop. This had never happened before. Everyone he ever faced always froze the moment he spoke. But these two were standing there, unaffected. The crowd grew restless. What is going on? Why is nothing happening? Did he lose the power? "Try again, sir," someone screamed. The man opened his mouth a third time, this time so wide that his jaw almost hurt. "Stop this fight now." Silence. The wind blew dust across the street, but the fighters did not move. One gang man laughed, a deep, loud, dangerous laugh. "So now you people call savior?" he mocked. The other gang man joined. This small man, this ordinary man. The crowd gasped. The man felt humiliation crawl through his skin like fire ants. He tried one more time, one more desperate attempt. He opened his mouth and shouted with all his strength, "Stop." Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The fighters burst into laughter. One pointed at him and said, "This one get weak mouth." The other slapped his own leg while laughing uncontrollably. "He no even smell. He no get power." The crowd began whispering, then murmuring, then openly discussing his failure. "Ha! His power failed. No wonder. I knew it was not natural. So the miracle has expired. Maybe he brushed his teeth today. Maybe the angels took back the gift." Whispers turned into giggles. Giggles turned into loud laughter. He had never felt so exposed in his life. He stood there helpless, embarrassed, confused. The confidence he never wanted but accidentally carried suddenly shattered in front of everyone. He turned to leave, but the crowd did not even make space for him. They just stared, disappointed and shocked. Someone shouted loudly from behind, "Before we continue watching this story, please like this video, subscribe, and tell us in the comments if you think his power is finished or something else is going on." The man did not hear them. His mind was drowning. Another woman shouted, "Sir, try again. Please. They will kill each other." He did not try again. Something inside him knew the truth. Whatever was happening today was beyond him. Those two fighters were not like any other people he had met. They were chewing something. His eyes caught it, small green pieces moving in their mouths. Gum. Strong gum. Very strong mint gum. Mint so powerful it could fight his own odor. He stared at them, and in that moment, he realized a bitter truth. His mouth odor had finally met something stronger than itself. The fighters charged at each other again, swinging weapons. The crowd ran in 10 different directions. People screamed. Dust rose. Chaos returned. And the man walked away slowly, feeling like the sky had collapsed on his shoulders. He did not know where he was going. He just knew he needed to breathe. He walked past a group of teenagers laughing at him. One shouted, "Your power no work again." Another said, "Recharge your mouth, sir." He kept walking. He passed market women whispering. One said, "Ah, this is shame." Another said, "We trusted him too much." He kept walking. He reached his kiosk and sat down heavily. His heart was shaking. His hands were trembling. His mind was blank. He had lost more than power today. He had lost the respect the community gave him. The sun slowly dropped behind rooftops, turning the sky orange and purple. People kept passing, pointing, whispering. By evening, his failure had already gone viral. Videos everywhere. Comments everywhere. Mockery everywhere. But he did not open his phone. He just sat on his tiny stool, staring into the distance, unsure if he would ever find the courage to step forward again. He did not know that this failure was the beginning of something bigger, much bigger, something that would change everything. Again, the morning after his failure felt heavier than any morning he had ever lived through. It was the kind of morning that made the sky look dull, like even the sun was embarrassed to rise. He lay awake for many hours, staring at the old ceiling in his room, listening to the soft breathing of his wife beside him, and wondering why life had suddenly turned against him. He had never asked to be a hero. He had never asked for fame. All he wanted was peace. Quiet, ordinary peace. But life rarely gave people exactly what they wanted. His wife woke first. She stretched gently, then looked at him as if she already knew something was wrong. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. He shook his head. She sat up slowly, sadness filling her eyes. "It's because of yesterday?" He didn't answer. Silence was enough. He finally whispered, "The whole world now knows I am useless." His wife touched his arm. "Don't speak like that." "But it's the truth," he replied bitterly. "Everybody was waiting for me. They pushed me forward. They believed in me. And when I opened my mouth, nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. I was standing there like a fool while those boys laughed at me. They laughed at me like I was a clown." His wife sighed gently. "People forget easily. Today they mock you. Tomorrow they will need you again." He closed his eyes tightly. Not after what happened yesterday. Even children were laughing. Her hand remained on his arm, but her heart felt heavy. She had never seen her husband break this way. The strong man she married, the same man who jokingly called himself ordinary man with extraordinary mouth, now looked like someone whose spirit had been drained. She whispered, "Life will explain everything in time." But her words didn't comfort him. When he finally stepped outside, the atmosphere hit him like a slap. The street was unusually active, and not in a good way. People were gathered in small groups whispering loudly. As he walked past them, some disguised their faces, while others didn't even bother to hide their reactions. One man hissed loudly, "Look at him, fake power." Another man added, "He deceived all of us." I knew something wasn't right. A woman drying clothes in front of her house muttered to her neighbor, "So is this how his chapter ends?" Just like that. Her neighbor laughed. "Ah, my sister, life is unpredictable. Yesterday's hero can become today's comedy." The words stung like pepper in fresh wounds. Even children who used to run away playfully now pointed at him with bold confidence. One girl wearing school uniform shouted, "Your mouth no day work again." Another boy added, "Sir, go and renew your power." He tried to ignore them, but the shame wrapped around him like a heavy blanket. He reached the main road where the Acro woman sold every morning. Normally, she would greet him politely, but today she looked at him differently, like he was no longer special. "Good morning," he said quietly. She didn't smile. She didn't shift her stool. She simply nodded and continued flipping acroballs in hot oil. He paid for bread and continued walking, feeling invisible and exposed at the same time. When he reached a small kiosk, the worst part of the day welcomed him. A group of young men stood in front of the shop, laughing loudly. One of them acted like he was opening his mouth dramatically and said, "Stop the fight." Then he laughed so hard, he almost fell. Another held his stomach, replying, "The power don die, oh, na mint gum kill am." They didn't even move when the man approached. Instead, they looked him dead in the eye and started clapping mockingly. "Sir, please open your mouth again so we can faint," one shouted. Another man acted like he was collapsing dramatically. "Ah, I smell nothing. Nothing. The era has ended." The man's chest tightened sharply. He didn't know how he held himself together. He quietly moved past them and unlocked his kiosk. But before he could sit down, one of the boys asked loudly, "Sir, is the government aware that your ministry has expired?" The whole group burst into laughter. He wanted to shout. He wanted to tell them to leave. He wanted to remind them that he never asked for this burden, this fame, this responsibility. But his voice refused to come out. He had lost more than power. He had lost confidence. He sat in his kiosk quietly and tried to breathe, but trouble came even here. Customers who usually respected him now came just to laugh. Some pretended they wanted to buy something, but instead asked insulting questions. One man said, "Sir, can you stop my wife from talking too much? Or you can only stop small fights." Another asked, "If you open your mouth now, can you at least blow breeze?" A woman said, "I told my husband you had spiritual gift. Now see me. I am ashamed." The man wanted to walk away, but he had nowhere to go. He needed his kiosk. He needed to sell something to make money. But selling became impossible because no one came to buy, only to mock. By midday, his legs were shaking. His chest was heavy. His eyes were wet, though he fought the tears. Every little insult felt like someone was removing a piece of his dignity. Just when he thought the humiliation was complete, another familiar face appeared. An elderly man who lived across the street. He had always respected him before, but now he approached with a cruel smirk. "So you are just ordinary human being," the old man said slowly, shaking his head. "You made us believe you were special. We depended on you. We prayed for you. And you disappointed all of us." The man swallowed painfully. "I didn't choose any of this," he whispered. "But you enjoyed it," the old man snapped. "You let people carry you like hero. You let people call you savior. You enjoyed popularity. Now see yourself." The old man walked away, leaving him broken. He leaned his head against the wall of his kiosk and closed his eyes tightly. His heart was aching like someone stabbed him. He didn't know which hurt more, the failure or the humiliation. He stayed in that position for many minutes until he felt a familiar hand touch his shoulder. It was his wife. Her eyes softened when she saw him. "Let's go home," she said gently. "I need to stay here," he murmured. "I need to be strong." "You're tired," she whispered. He didn't argue. She helped him pack his things and walked home beside him. Her presence felt like the only peaceful thing left in his life. When they reached home, he sat on the bed and stared into space. "Why did this happen?" he whispered. "Why did my mouth fail?" His wife thought for a moment before answering. "Sometimes, even your weakness meets something stronger than itself." He blinked. "What do you mean?" She sighed softly. "Didn't you see them chewing something?" He frowned. "What?" "Mint gum," she replied quietly. "Strong mint." He remembered the green pieces in their mouths. His eyes widened slowly. Mint so powerful it could cancel his odor. His wife nodded gently. "Those boys neutralize your mouth without knowing." He looked down at his hands. "Something as small as mint?" She smiled sadly. "Sometimes the smallest things bring the biggest humiliation." He sat there quietly, absorbing the truth. His power was not supernatural. It was not spiritual. It was not divine. It was simply odor, strong, embarrassing odor. And something stronger had defeated it. Mint gum. He felt even smaller than before. His wife cupped his face and forced him to look at her. "Listen to me," she said gently. "Maybe your gift was never your odor. Maybe the real gift is still ahead. Maybe this failure is opening a door for something bigger." He didn't believe her. Not yet. His heart was too wounded. But a seed of curiosity settled inside him. Was there truly something else? Was life preparing him for something beyond his understanding? He didn't know. All he knew was that the world saw him as a joke again, even more than before. Evening came, and the sound of laughter from neighboring compounds reminded him of his new reputation. People told the story of his failure with excitement and gestures. They acted out the moment he opened his mouth and nothing happened. The whole community had turned his shame into entertainment. He sat beside his wife outside their door, watching the sun fade into darkness. She whispered, "You are stronger than this." He shook his head. "I don't feel strong." She held his hand and didn't let go. Strength is not always a feeling. Sometimes it is a journey. He didn't respond. He just stared at the sky quietly, wondering if tomorrow would be worse, or if somehow life had a strange plan waiting for him. He didn't know that another disaster was approaching soon, bigger than any fight he had ever seen. A disaster that would test not just his mouth, but his entire spirit. The day trouble returned to community began like a quiet rumble beneath the earth, soft, hidden, but dangerous. There were whispers early in the morning, whispers of anger, whispers of betrayal, whispers of unpaid debts between two neighborhoods that had been holding grudges for years. It started like smoke, thin, almost invisible. But everyone knows that where there is smoke, fire is not far behind. The man didn't know about the whispers. He was inside his small room, sitting on the edge of his bed, watching the sunlight crawl slowly across the cracked floor. His mind was still heavy from everything that had happened. He hadn't gone to his kiosk the day before. His wife had tried her best to comfort him, but you can only comfort someone for so long before their silence becomes stronger than your words. He rubbed his face slowly. He felt older than his age. Fame had come without warning, and humiliation had followed it like a shadow that refused to leave. His wife walked in quietly, tying her wrapper. She looked at him with gentle concern. "Are you going to shop today?" she asked. He shrugged. "Maybe later." "You can't hide forever," she said softly. He didn't answer. He knew she was right, but the thought of facing people again felt like a fresh wound. The street outside was unusually quiet. Too quiet. Normally, morning in the neighborhood came with shouting, generators humming, music playing somewhere, and at least 3 arguments happening in different corners. But today, the silence felt wrong. A little boy burst into the street, running full speed, shouting, "They have started! They have started!" His voice filled the air like an alarm. The man looked up sharply. His wife opened the door wider. "Started what?" Before the boy could answer, noise erupted in the far distance. Loud shouting, loud crashing, then sharp screams. People began running through the street, mothers pulling children into the house, old men limping hurriedly, shop owners dragging their goods inside. The fight had begun. But this was no small fight. Not between 2 women in the road. Not between 2 bus drivers. Not between quarrelsome market women. This was something far worse. The man stepped outside, his heartbeat quickening. The air was filled with dust and panic. A neighbor rushed past him, panting heavily. "They are fighting, 2 whole communities. It has turned to war." His wife gasped. "War? Where?" "At the junction," the neighbor shouted, not even slowing down. "People are running. It's not safe." The man felt something sharp coil in his stomach. He didn't want to go near the chaos. He didn't want to see the anger, the weapons, the violence. He didn't want anyone to call him again. He didn't want the responsibility. After what happened last time, he believed he had nothing to offer. But the world had a strange way of calling people, even when they hid. Suddenly, a group of frantic women ran directly toward him. They didn't slow down. They didn't hesitate. They didn't think twice. They ran like people who had just seen a miracle standing in human form. "There he is," one screamed. "Please help us." Another woman fell to her knees in front of him. "Sir, they will kill themselves. Please, please come." He stepped back instinctively. No, I can't do anything." A man with sweat dripping down his face rushed forward. "Sir, we beg you. The police cannot control them. They are breaking bottles. They're using sticks. They're destroying shops." The man shook his head firmly. "I have no power. Please understand. I cannot help." The entire group gasped. A younger woman cried desperately. "They have carried one boy away with blood. Children are inside shops hiding. Please, you are the only one who can stop this." The only one. The words cut deep. Last week, they mocked him. Last week, they laughed at him. Last week, they said he was finished. Now they wanted him again. He felt bitterness rising, but fear rose even faster. He whispered, "I am not who you think I am." But they didn't hear his fear. People rarely hear the fear of those they depend on. The man's wife stepped out and touched his shoulder. The whole world seemed to freeze for a moment as her calm voice filled the air. "My husband," she said gently, "they need you again." He turned to her, eyes pained. "But I failed before. What if I fail again? What if something worse happens? What if they laugh at me again? I cannot survive that shame twice." His wife held his face with both hands. "Listen to me. This is bigger than you. Life does not ask if you are ready before it chooses you. It simply chooses." Tears burned the back of his eyes. "I am scared." She nodded softly. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is walking forward even when your legs are shaking. He swallowed painfully. She continued, "Go. If you try and fail, you fail with honor. But if you stay here while people die, you will never forgive yourself." The man took a long, trembling breath. He didn't want to go, but he could not ignore the truth in her eyes. He looked at the crowd. Their faces were desperate, hopeful, terrified. One man said, "If you don't come, people may not survive." Something inside the man shifted. Maybe it was courage. Maybe it was duty. Maybe it was destiny. He didn't know. But he did something he didn't expect. He nodded. The whole crowd exhaled at once, grateful and relieved. They surrounded him, not pushing him this time, but walking with him, guiding him gently. His wife watched silently, praying in her heart that he would return safely. As they approached the junction, the noise grew louder and louder. It sounded like thunder had entered the street. People were screaming, shouting, breaking things. The fight was not small, it was huge. Dozens of men, women, and angry youths were in the middle of the street, throwing stones, beating one another, and destroying anything they could reach. The moment the crowd saw the man approaching, someone shouted, "He's here!" The noise paused for a split second. Heads turned, eyes widened. Then someone else shouted with hope, and fear welded into one voice. "The man who stops fights has come." Suddenly, everyone stepped aside, clearing a path for him whether they believed in him or not. People made space like a miracle, just walked into battlefield. But the man's legs felt weak. This was far worse than he imagined. Shops were destroyed. A woman was crying over her injured son. Men held sticks. Some held bottle pieces. Others held metal rods. Anger filled the air like smoke from fire. The street looked like two storms had collided. A man whispered beside him, "Sir, if you don't do something, this entire area will finish." He stepped forward slowly, heart pounding so hard it shook his chest. The fighters noticed him. Some recognized him immediately. "Is that not the mouth man?" one shouted. "That man Wei failed last week." Another mocked. "This one no get power again," a boy laughed. Their words dug into him like knives, but he forced himself to keep moving. He stopped in the middle of the chaos. His hands were trembling. His breath was shallow. He opened his mouth slightly and whispered, "Stop." Only a few people reacted. Some flinched, others stepped back a little, but most ignored him. His odor was no longer enough. Too many people, too much noise, too much anger. He opened his mouth wider. "Stop this." A few more people paused, but the chaos continued. He swallowed hard. His knees felt weak. His fear returned. His humiliation returned. He feared he had made a mistake coming here. A bottle flew past his head, shattering on the ground beside him. He jumped. People screamed. Someone shouted, "Sir, try again." He tried. He opened his mouth and shouted, "Everybody stop." Silence fell for only 1 second. Then everything exploded again. He took a step back, heart pounding in panic. "It's not working," he whispered to himself. "It's not working." He stared at the chaos, the destruction, the fear, the tears, the hopelessness, and something inside him broke open. For the first time in his life, he realized something. It was never about odor. It was never about embarrassment. It was never about what people thought. It was about something deeper, something he never tapped into. something he didn't know he possessed. His voice, his courage, his presence. Slowly, he climbed onto a broken wooden stool in the middle of the crowd. The stool wobbled, but he balanced himself. People stared up at him, confused, unsure what he was doing. He took a deep breath, and for the first time in his life, he spoke with true power. Not spit, not odor, not shame, but strength. "Listen to me," he shouted with a voice so deep, so loud, so commanding that it shook the air around him. People froze, not because of smell, but because of authority. He continued, voice strong like thunder. "You are destroying your own homes. You are hurting your brothers and sisters. What will your children inherit after today? Blood? Broken bottles? Empty streets? Is this the legacy you want?" The fighters paused. Even the ones with weapons lowered their hands slightly. He pointed at them, still standing tall. "Every one of you has a family waiting at home. You think they want to hear that you died over a stupid argument? What will you gain? What will you take home tonight? Nothing." The crowd grew quiet. Only his voice moved. "Put down your weapons. All of you." One man dropped his stick. Then another. A woman threw away a bottle. A young boy let go of a stone he had raised to throw. The street grew still, silent, peaceful. Slowly the fight died, not because of smell, not because of fear, but because of wisdom. And as the man stood on the stool, breathing hard, sweat rolling down his face, tears gathered in his eyes, not from shame this time, but from a realization that for the first time, he had saved people with his true strength, not his mouth odor, but his voice, his courage, his heart, something he never knew he had. The crowd stared at him with awe. Someone whispered, "This is the real him." Another person murmured, "This is his true power." The man climbed down slowly, legs shaking, not from fear this time, but from the weight of what he had just done. His wife appeared at the entrance of the street, eyes filled with pride and relief. For the first time in a long time, he did not look like a joke. He looked like a leader, a hero, a man discovering himself. And somewhere deep inside him, he knew this was only the beginning. The day after the riot ended was a strange one for the man. The whole community was quiet, not because they were scared, but because they were thinking. People were confused, surprised, shocked, and some were still trying to understand how a man who had once stopped fights with only his mouth had suddenly become a man whose voice alone could silence hundreds of angry people. Almost every corner of the neighborhood buzzed with conversation. Some people said he had new power. Others said he had been pretending all along. Some even said he had spiritual calling. But nobody knew the truth, and only if you wanted to ask him directly. The man sat outside his house early in the morning, still processing everything that had happened. His wife brought him a bowl of warm pap and bread. "Eat," she said softly. "Your body needs strength." He took the bowl, but didn't drink. His mind was too full for food. His wife sat beside him. "What is troubling you?" she asked gently. He sighed. "I don't understand myself anymore. Yesterday, I didn't use odor. I didn't use anything. I just talked." His voice trembled slightly. "How did hundreds of angry people listen to me?" His wife smiled. "Because yesterday, you didn't speak with your mouth. You spoke with your heart." He looked at her doubtfully. "What does that even mean?" She placed her hand on his shoulder. "You spoke from a place of truth. You didn't try to impress anyone. You didn't try to prove anything. You were afraid, yes, but you rose above it. People don't follow odor. They follow courage." He looked down at his hands, thinking deeply. "So my mouth is useless now?" She laughed quietly. "Your mouth was never the real gift." He almost smiled, but pain sat inside his chest. He still remembered the laughter, the mockery, the shame he faced when his odor failed. Yesterday's victory didn't erase that humiliation. It only reminded him that life could embarrass you and honor you in the same week. Before he could respond, a group of people from a neighborhood began walking toward his compound. He recognized them instantly. Market women, bus drivers, young boys, elders, all carrying different expressions of gratitude. But gratitude was not something he was ready to accept yet. One elderly woman stepped forward and said, "Sir, we have come to thank you." You saved us yesterday. You saved our children. You saved our husbands. You saved our shops. Another woman added, If not for you, we would be burying people today. He shook his head. I didn't do much. It was you people who decided to stop fighting. No, an elder said firmly. It was your voice that touched everyone. Voices of agreement filled the air. He felt overwhelmed. I don't know what to say, he whispered. His wife stepped forward and greeted the crowd warmly. They greeted her back with smiles, admiration, and deep respect. But the man could not bring himself to return the smiles. Something inside him felt unsettled, like a piece of him was still missing. After the crowd left, he walked to his kiosk. The road was peaceful, but his mind was not. As he sat down, customers approached him slowly, not mocking this time, but respectful. Some greeted him, some nodded, some bought small items just to support him. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, just quiet acknowledgement. But inside, the man felt strange. He was grateful, but he also felt something shifting. He felt a new kind of responsibility, one he wasn't ready for. Later in the afternoon, he packed his things and decided to take a walk. He walked past the burnt shops, the broken windows, the cracked bottles, the dried blood on the road. The fight had left scars everywhere. He felt the weight of everything heavy on his chest. For the first time since everything started, he wished he understood why life chose him for all of this. As he walked deeper into the community, he reached a small, quiet corner where 3 young boys were talking. Their voices carried easily in the silent afternoon. One boy said, Do you know the man's smell didn't work yesterday? Another answered, Forget smell. He used voice. The man is wise. The third boy said, Maybe he is now a prophet. People don't know. They didn't know he was behind them. He turned around quietly, intending to leave, but his legs felt heavy. He didn't want people to worship him. He didn't want them to expect miracles. He didn't want them to depend on him for things beyond his control. He just wanted to be normal, but the world had pushed him far from normal. He kept walking until he reached an abandoned bus stop. There was no one around. The air was still. He sat down slowly, resting both elbows on his knees. He felt small again, vulnerable, uncertain. For the first time since all this began, he whispered to himself, What is happening to me? He didn't expect an answer. Life rarely answers questions that easily. He looked at the cracked tile floor of the bus stop, then at the sky. The sun was beginning to lower, creating long shadows that reached like arms across the road. His heart felt heavy again. The quietness around him made his thoughts louder. He spoke softly. If my mouth odor is gone completely, then what am I supposed to do? What happened yesterday was just luck. What if I can't do it again? What if they expect too much from me? What if someone gets hurt because of me? He ran a hand across his face. His heartbeat felt heavy and uneven. He stood up and walked back home slowly, dragging his feet like he carried a mountain. His wife saw him from a distance and hurried toward him. You look tired, she said with worry. I am, he replied weakly. She helped him sit on the wooden bench outside their house. Talk to me, she said. Let me understand your mind. He shook his head. I don't understand myself. How can I explain what I don't understand? His wife's eyes softened. You don't have to understand everything immediately. Some journeys explain themselves as you walk. He sighed deeply. I feel like something bigger is coming. His wife's face tightened with concern. Bigger how? He hesitated. I don't know. I just feel it. She squeezed his hand. Whatever it is, we will face it together. He didn't respond. He looked at the sky instead. The clouds felt heavier than before, as if they were leaning down with purpose. They sat outside in silence until the sun had fully descended and the sky turned navy blue. The streetlights flickered one after the other like weak stars. Neighbors passed by slowly, greeting politely, their faces filled with quiet gratitude. But he still didn't feel whole. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, he sat alone in the living room with the dim bulb flickering above his head. He thought about everything that happened. The day he became a hero, the day he became a joke, the day he fell, and the day he rose again. It was too much for one lifetime. He whispered to himself, If my odor is gone, What do I do now? His voice broke halfway through question. The strange part was he didn't feel the old odor in his mouth anymore. It was as if something had erased it. Something had taken away the smell that people feared, the smell that controlled crowds, the smell that had been his unwanted signature. He didn't know if he was relieved or scared. Weeks passed. Life returned to normal, or at least the closest version of normal possible. People didn't mock him anymore. They respected him quietly. They still told the story of the Great Riot and how he stopped it with pure words. Women told the story to their children. Men narrated it in bars. Teenagers acted out the scene dramatically, but he still felt torn. He didn't want to be a legend. Legends carry weight. Legends carry expectations. Legends are rarely allowed to rest. In the middle of these feelings, one afternoon as he sat in his kiosk, a young man approached him. He recognized the boy's eyes. They were troubled, sad, desperate. "Sir," the young man said softly, "can I talk to you?" The man nodded slowly. "Sit." The boy sat and breathed deeply. "I was part of the fight that day." The man nodded again. "I am ashamed of what I did." The boy's voice cracked. "My mother cried for 3 days. She said I almost died." The man looked at him gently. The boy continued, "I didn't listen before, but when you talked that day, something inside me changed." The man's eyebrows rose slightly. "What do you mean?" The boy swallowed hard. "Your words, they entered me like fire. They showed me how foolish I was. They made me think about my future. Sir, since that day, I promised myself I will never fight again." The man opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. The boy continued, "I came to thank you. You saved my life." The man's throat tightened. "I didn't do anything special," he whispered. The boy shook his head. "You did. You don't know what your voice carries." The man stared at the boy quietly. Not his odor, his voice. Something deep inside him shifted again. After the boy left, the man sat quietly for a long time. Maybe this was the answer he had been searching for. Maybe his strength was not in the humiliation he carried for years. Maybe his strength was in the way he saw people, in the way he felt their pain, in the way he spoke truth. Maybe his true power was not physical, not accidental, not embarrassing. Maybe it was purpose. Years of humiliation had built something inside him he didn't recognize. Courage, compassion, wisdom. And now people could hear it. He leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he felt something like peace. He didn't know exactly who he was becoming, but he knew one thing. Whatever was coming next, he was ready to face it. The morning after the young boy came to thank him felt strangely different. The sky was clearer than usual, and the breeze carried a gentle calmness that the community hadn't felt in a long time. Birds sat quietly on electrical wires. Women washing clothes didn't shout across compounds like their usual habits. Even the smell of frying akra felt softer in the air. It was as if the entire neighborhood was healing after the wounds of the great fight. The man woke up earlier than usual. He sat on the bed for a long time before getting up, touching his chest as if trying to confirm whether the heaviness was still there. It wasn't gone, but it had softened. The words a young boy had said the day before still echoed inside him like a small flame refusing to die. You don't know what your voice carries. No one had ever said that to him before. His voice, his presence, his wisdom, these were things he never thought he had. The world had always defined him by his mouth odor, not by anything deeper. For years, he believed he was a joke, a moving embarrassment, a man whose identity was tied to a smell he didn't ask for. But now, everything seemed to be shifting. His wife noticed him staring into nothing. "Your mind is working," she said gently. He nodded. "I don't understand what is happening." "You don't have to," she replied. "Just walk the journey." He sighed softly. "People are beginning to look at me differently." "Because they're beginning to see you differently," she said. "Before, they saw only your weakness. Now they see your strength." He didn't answer. He didn't know what to say. Strength was not something he had ever associated with himself. But maybe life was teaching him something new. As they ate breakfast, a knock sounded loudly on the door. His wife went to open it, and a group of people stood outside again, familiar faces, but with new emotions. They weren't mocking. They weren't laughing. They weren't starstruck. They looked unsure and humbled, almost like they were approaching a leader. An elderly man stepped forward and bowed his head slightly. "Good morning, sir." The man blinked, confused. "Good morning." The old man cleared his throat. "Yesterday, after the riot, I realized something." He paused, struggling for words. "I judged you wrongly before. We all did." A murmur of agreement passed through the group. The elderly man continued, "You saved this community not once, but twice. First with your mouth, then with your voice. We came to thank you properly." The man shifted uncomfortably. Praise still felt strange on his skin. "I didn't do it alone," he said quietly. "People chose to stop fighting." A younger woman stepped forward, eyes shining with emotion. "But you gave them the strength to choose." He swallowed hard, not knowing how to respond. Another woman added softly, "If you hadn't spoken yesterday, many people would have died." His wife turned to him with a small, proud smile. She didn't say a word, but her eyes said everything. After the crowd left, the man sat alone on the wooden bench outside. The sun had risen fully now, casting light across the houses. The sky looked peaceful, but his heart was still wrestling with questions he couldn't answer. He sat there for many hours, lost in his thoughts, until he heard distant footsteps approaching. Not hurried, not panicked, but steady. He looked up and saw the community chief walking toward him. The chief was an older man with a calm face and authority in his walk. People respected him deeply. When the chief reached him, he sat down beside the man without saying a word. For a long moment, they just sat together in silence. Finally, the chief spoke. "This community is changing," he said, "and part of that change started with you." The man shook his head. "I am nobody. I didn't ask for this." "Life does not always wait for people to ask," the chief replied softly. "It chooses who it chooses." The man frowned. "But my odor was the only thing I was known for." The chief smiled gently. "Nobody becomes great because of the things they are ashamed of. It is what they do after the shame that matters." The words hit him deeply. "You stood in front of angry men," the chief continued, "men who were ready to kill, but your voice stopped them. Your words reached where your odor could not reach. That is a rare gift." The man looked down at his hands. "But what if it was luck?" The chief shook his head. "Luck doesn't change hearts. Luck doesn't break weapons. Luck doesn't end war. Only truth does." The man didn't reply. He just breathed out slowly. "You have something inside you," the chief said. "You might not understand it yet, but you will. And whether you like it or not, people will look to you again." He felt his chest tighten with fear. "I don't want people to depend on me." The chief placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "They don't depend on you for miracle. They depend on you for guidance. There is a difference." Those words settled into his heart like seeds falling into soil. Later that day, he walked through the community slowly. People greeted him with respect. Genuine respect, not fear, not mockery. Women waved from their shops. Men nodded firmly at him. Children smiled shyly. Even the men who mocked him days ago lowered their eyes when he passed. He wasn't used to this. It felt strange. It felt heavy. But something about it felt right, too. As he walked further, he saw two women arguing near a shop. Not fighting, just arguing loudly. He froze automatically. His body reacted before his mind did. But as he watched them, something shocking happened. They stopped arguing on their own. One woman said, "Please, let's not fight again, before we disgrace ourselves." The other agreed. "Yes, we don't want what happened last time." They both laughed awkwardly and walked separate ways. The man blinked, surprised. He didn't have to intervene. He didn't have to open his mouth. He didn't even get close. People were now learning to think before fighting, not because of fear, but because of wisdom. The entire community was changing, and he had played a part. He felt a strange emotion rise in his chest, something warm, something soft, something like pride, but deeper, something like purpose. As he walked back home, a group of teenage boys ran up to him. "Sir," one of them shouted breathlessly, "please come. They are calling you at the community hall." His heart tightened. "Why?" "We don't know," one boy said, "but everyone is waiting. Please come quickly." The boys ran ahead, and he followed slowly, unsure of what awaited him. His wife saw him passing and followed quietly behind, her heart beating fast. When he reached the community hall, he was shocked. The hall was full. Men, women, elders, youths. Everyone was seated, waiting quietly. The room fell completely silent when he walked in. People stood slowly, bowing their heads. He froze at the entrance, not understanding what was happening. The chief stepped forward. "Sir," the chief said with a calm voice that carried authority, "we have something to tell you." The man swallowed hard. The chief continued, "This community has seen many things. We have faced hardship, fear, division. But in all my years, I have never witnessed one man bring peace to hundreds of people with only his words." The man's heart began to race. The chief raised his hand and said loudly for all to hear, "You are no longer the man with odor. You are now the man of wisdom, the man of peace." A murmur of agreement filled the room. "We honor you today," the chief declared, "because you showed us that true power comes from the heart, not the mouth." People clapped, slow at first, then louder, until the entire hall roared with applause. The man stood at the center of the noise, trembling from emotion he couldn't hide. He had never felt worthy of honor. He had never felt seen. He had never felt understood. But today, every tear he swallowed, every shame he carried, every mockery he endured, suddenly felt like pieces of a story that led somewhere meaningful. He felt his wife's hand slip into his. He looked down at her, and her eyes were full of tears. Tears of pride, tears of love, tears of relief. He whispered softly to her, "Is this really happening?" She whispered back, "You deserve it." The chief raised his hand again, and the hall grew quiet. "There is more," he said. "We want you to help guide this community from today onward, not with odor, not with fear, but with wisdom." The man's eyes widened. "Me? Guide the whole community?" "Yes," the chief said firmly. "You. Because only a man who has tasted shame, humiliation, and failure can understand people deeply enough to lead them with compassion." The man's heart thumped loudly. For the first time, he understood something. His journey had never been about shame. It had never been about odor. It had never been about fights. It had been shaping him into something greater, something he didn't even know he could be. And as he stood there, surrounded by people who now saw him as a leader, he felt the beginning of something new, something powerful, something he'd been running from without knowing, his true calling. The next few days felt like a new world had settled over the community. The sky looked clearer, the streets felt calmer, and the people walked with quiet respect that had never existed before. It was as if something heavy had been removed from the air. Anger, fear, tension. All of it felt lighter. Women selling tomatoes were smiling more. Young boys who usually fought over football were now playing with laughter, and men who once argued over parking space shook hands with surprising gentleness. The community was healing, and at the center of this new peace was a man who still didn't fully understand how his life had changed. He woke up early every morning and sat outside on a small wooden bench. Sometimes he watched the sunrise. Sometimes he watched the people walking by. Sometimes he listened to the soft voice of his wife as she hummed gospel songs while sweeping the compound. These simple things, which he had ignored for years, now felt like blessings he didn't deserve. But even in the calmness, he felt something stirring inside him, something growing, something waiting. His wife saw it too. She watched him closely every day, noticing how he sat deeper in thought, how he looked at people differently, how he no longer hid his face when neighbors greeted him. She knew something powerful was unfolding in him, something even he could not explain yet. One morning, she brought him hot tea and sat quietly beside him. "Your eyes are different," she said gently. He looked at her slowly. "Different how?" "Different like someone who has seen who they truly are," she replied. He shook his head. "I don't know who I truly am." She smiled. "You will." Later that day, He walked to the community hall, not because anyone called him, not because trouble was happening, but because he felt drawn there. The hall was empty when he arrived, sunlight streaming through the windows and leaving long golden lines across the wooden floor. He sat quietly, listening to the gentle echoes of the room. This was the same hall where they honored him, the same hall where they clapped, the same hall where he stood trembling, not knowing whether to accept the title they gave him, man of wisdom. He still didn't feel like he deserved that name. He had never been perfect. He had never been strong. He had never been confident. His entire life had been filled with mistakes, shame, and fear. So how could he now be the person people looked up to? He sat there until he heard footsteps at the entrance. When he turned, the chief was standing there with a calm smile. "You are thinking again," the chief said. The man nodded. The chief walked inside and sat beside him. "You remind me of someone," he said. "Who?" "Myself," the chief replied. "When I became leader many years ago, I doubted everything. I felt unworthy too." He looked at the man with soft eyes. "But leadership is not about being perfect. It is about being willing." The man breathed in deeply. "I don't know if I am willing." "But you are here," the chief said quietly. "And that means more than anything you say." They sat together in silence. Then the chief continued, "People will come to you. They will ask for your guidance. They will need help solving problems. Not because they think you know everything, but because they believe you listen." The man looked down. "I don't know if I can do that." "You have already started," the chief replied. He left the hall before the man could answer. As the man walked home, he found a small crowd gathered outside his house. His heart tightened instantly. He feared something happened. But as he approached, he saw their faces, worried, hopeful, frustrated. A middle-aged woman stepped forward, breathless from crying. "Sir, please help us," she said. "What happened?" he asked gently. "My son is fighting," she cried. "He is fighting with his uncle. They want to break the house." His stomach dropped. Not again. Before he could respond, the woman fell to her knees. "Sir, I beg you. They listen to no one. But maybe they will hear you." A younger man added, "They respect you. You are the only one who can talk to them." The man rubbed his forehead. "I don't know if—" But they didn't let him finish. "Please," the woman cried. "My family is falling apart." His wife touched his arm softly. "Go," she whispered. He nodded faintly. As they walked to the woman's compound, the man could hear the shouting before he even reached the gate. The argument was vicious, filled with years of bitterness and wounded pride. When he stepped inside, he saw the two men pushing and grabbing each other while other family members tried to pull them apart. The man raised his hand. "Stop," he said firmly. Nobody heard him. The shouting grew louder. His heart thumped painfully. He remembered the day his odor failed. He remembered the humiliation. He remembered the fear. He remembered how powerless he felt. He took a step back. His wife placed a hand on his back. "Use your voice," she whispered. He inhaled deeply. His mind raced. His heart shook. But something inside him rose, slowly, powerfully, like a lion waking from sleep. He stepped forward again. "Stop this now," he shouted. This time, his voice filled the compound like thunder rolling across the sky. The two men froze. Everyone else froze. Silence washed through the air like water from a broken dam. For a moment, even the wind felt still. He looked at both men firmly. "You are family," he said. "Family does not destroy each other. Family does not fight like strangers in the street. What will you tell your children tomorrow? That you broke your home because of pride." The older man looked down. Shame washed across his face. The younger one swallowed hard. The man continued softly. "Anger will make you destroy everything you love. But wisdom will bring healing. Now choose which one you want." Slowly, the older man dropped his hands. The younger one wiped his face. A ripple of relief moved through the family. The middle-aged woman fell to the ground crying. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." The man closed his eyes. "I didn't do anything. You all chose peace." But inside him, something shifted again. Something stronger. Something clearer. He was beginning to see himself, not as the man with odor, but as the man people could trust, as the man who brought calmness, as the man who could mend broken hearts. News of how he settled the family argument spread fast. In the following days, more people came, not for fights, but for counsel. Women came to ask for advice about their troubled marriages. Young men came to ask how to stay out of gang trouble. Parents came asking for guidance on raising their children. Neighbors came asking how to solve small disputes. He didn't know how to answer everything, but he listened. He thought deeply. He spoke with sincerity. And somehow his words helped. The community began to change around him. Fights reduced. Arguments became softer. People talked things out more. The place that once felt like a boiling pot now felt like a quiet river. And every day, he grew into his new role, slowly, humbly, naturally. One afternoon, he stood outside his kiosk, watching life move peacefully around him. A group of women were laughing together at the market stall. Young boys played football without shouting insults. Old men discussed politics without throwing chairs. Even notorious troublemakers now greeted people politely. His wife walked to him with a calm smile. "Look at this community," she said softly. He nodded. "It feels different." "It feels healed," she added. "It's not me," he said. "It is you," she insisted gently. "You help them remember who they are." He turned to her slowly. "Do you think this is my purpose?" She touched his face lovingly. "I think your purpose was never to stop fights with smell. Your purpose was to guide people with wisdom." He swallowed. "Wisdom? Me?" She smiled. "Wisdom is born from people who have suffered enough to understand life." He looked at the sky, breathing in deeply. He felt a strange peace settle over him, a peace he had never felt before. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't forced. It was simple and real. That night, as he lay in bed, he finally understood something. All the humiliation, all the jokes, all the mockery, all the pain, all the shame, they were not punishments. They were preparation. Life had been shaping him, not to embarrass him, but to refine him, not to break him, but to build him. He whispered softly into the darkness, "Thank you, God, for using even my shame." His wife turned and smiled in the dim light. "What did you say?" He squeezed her hand gently. "Nothing, just thinking." She kissed his forehead. "You are becoming who you were meant to be." He smiled faintly, and somewhere deep inside him, he knew she was right. Not because he was strong, not because he was special, not because he was perfect, but because he was willing. The next morning, the community chief gathered everyone again. When the man arrived, the chief stood proudly and said, "From today, this community has a new guide, a man whose heart speaks louder than any weapon, a man who turned humiliation into strength, a man who taught us peace." People clapped loudly. Children danced. Women ululated. Men nodded with deep respect. And the man stood there, humbled, emotional, overwhelmed, but ready. His true journey had finally begun. An entire community knew. He was no longer the man whose mouth odor stopped fights. He was now the man whose wisdom changed lives.